The sun bore down mercilessly on a cracked parking lot outside a small-town diner in Georgia, baking the pavement to a shimmering haze. The old neon sign buzzed lazily overhead. Betty's Biscuits, a place where regulars chewed grits and small talk with equal ease. But on this sweltering July afternoon, conversation screeched to a halt. A tall black man stepped out of a sleek black Ford Explorer, his stride calm, purposeful. He was dressed casually, jeans, pressed polo, clean Timberlands. His bearing, though, was unmistakably military. He held himself with the silent authority of someone used to giving orders and having them followed. Inside the diner, an elderly white couple watched him through the blinds. The woman leaned in close to her husband. "He's walking toward Jenkins' cruiser," she whispered, concern tightening her voice. "Hope there's no trouble." Officer Darren Jenkins was leaning against his patrol car, sipping an energy drink, lazily scrolling through his phone. He looked up, saw the man approaching, and squinted with disdain. "You lost, sir?" "No, just checking on my team. My guys are supposed to meet me here," the man said evenly. His voice was calm but carried weight. Jenkins eyed the SUV and narrowed his eyes. "This your vehicle?" "Yes." "You got ID on you?" "Why?" "Suspicious vehicle, tinted windows, parked a little crooked. Got a call about possible narcotics transport." "No, you didn't," the man said calmly, eyes steady. "And I'm not transporting anything. I parked because this is where we agreed to meet." "I'll ask one more time. ID." The man sighed and reached slowly for his back pocket. Jenkins' hand twitched toward his holster. "I'm not armed. Easy." But Jenkins didn't wait. With a sudden burst, he lunged forward, grabbed the man by the arm, twisted him around, and slammed him hard onto the blistering pavement. "Stop resisting," Jenkins barked, pinning the man's face to the ground. The man winced but didn't move. People inside the diner gasped. Phones emerged. Some filmed, some did not. "You've got no cause for this," the man grunted through gritted teeth. "I didn't resist." "You fit the profile," Jenkins sneered. "We've had problems around here. I'm not taking chances." And just as quickly as it began, Jenkins froze. There was a distant rumble, a series of synchronized car doors opening, boots stepping onto the pavement. A dozen men and women rounded the corner from the back of the parking lot. Uniforms crisp, boots polished, metals glinting in the sun. Their movements were sharp, deliberate. One of them barked, "General Davis?" Jenkins turned his head, his face drained of color. The pinned man slowly turned his head and offered Jenkins a cold, measured look. "That's my unit." The soldiers moved fast. Jenkins was surrounded in seconds. One sergeant stepped forward, towering and furious. "Unhand the general," he said with icy calm. Jenkins stuttered. I didn't know who he was. He didn't say he was." "He didn't ask," said General Marcus Davis, rising to his feet with the help of a lieutenant. "Because you assumed." You thought I was a threat. You assumed I was just another black man in a nice car in your small town." Davis's voice was calm now, but laced with something harder. "But this just assaulted a senior-ranking officer in the United States Army, a general." The sergeant held up his phone. "Already live-streamed, multiple angles. Copies uploaded to Base Cloud and directly to our JAG liaison." Jenkins stepped back, trembling. I didn't mean... "Intent doesn't erase consequences," Davis said. "And you just set off a chain reaction that's going to roll right over your career." Officer Jenkins looked for help, but the townspeople had turned away. His chief, who had been eating lunch inside the diner, now stood slack-jawed in the doorway. The general dusted himself off. His voice lowered to a growl. "You think this is about me? No. This is about every single time someone who looks like me is treated as a criminal first and a person never." Jenkins was now red-faced, sweating, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Davis turned to his unit. "Secure his body cam footage. Record everything. No one lays a hand on him. We're not stooping to his level." The soldiers moved efficiently, surrounding Jenkins without touching him. Another officer stepped in, Captain Morales, his demeanor calm but authoritative. "We're calling county, state, and military liaison. Until then, Officer Jenkins is to remain here under observation. I suggest you sit on the curb, Darren." Jenkins dropped slowly, numbly sitting on the concrete like a puppet whose strings had been cut. The town buzzed with whispers. Phones buzzed. Within minutes, the footage was already making waves online. But Marcus Davis wasn't interested in viral fame. He was interested in consequences. He wasn't done yet. Because this wasn't just about a small-town cop. This was about the system that had let him wear that badge unchecked. This was about changing it by any means necessary. And the general had only just begun to fight.
The sun dipped behind a row of pine trees, throwing long shadows across the quiet Georgia town as the diner parking lot transformed from a local eatery's entrance into the eye of a storm. Officer Jenkins sat slumped on the curb, pale and silent, while the soldiers of the 9th Combat Logistics Battalion stood motionless around him. General Marcus Davis stood just feet away, his uniform now crisp and on, medals glinting in the orange light. He had taken a moment to change in his SUV, symbolic, yes, but strategic. The badge didn't recognize his polo shirt. Maybe it would respect a full-dress uniform. A silver government sedan arrived in minutes, followed by 2 black SUVs. From them stepped Colonel Linda Carver from JAG Corps, the Military Legal Division, and a representative from the State Attorney's Office, flanked by 2 plainclothes federal investigators. The air thickened with the weight of command. Colonel Carver walked up, expression grim. "General Davis, we've reviewed the footage," she said. "No question. Unlawful detainment, excessive force, targeted profiling. You want us to file federal charges?" Davis didn't answer right away. His eyes remained locked on Jenkins. "Not yet," he said. "I want more than prosecution. I want exposure. I want the rot peeled back layer by layer." Carver nodded once. She understood. "Then I'll coordinate with Internal Affairs, the Department of Justice and Civil Rights Division, but we'll keep the file open." Marcus turned back to his men. "Dismissed, soldiers. Return to base. Debrief is postponed until 0900 tomorrow." They saluted in perfect sync. Then one by one they dispersed with dignity, each glance at Jenkins sharper than any words. As the parking lot emptied, Davis approached Jenkins. "You know," he said quietly, "I spent 28 years fighting for a country that lets people like you wear a badge. That irony alone is enough to keep me up at night. But not anymore." Jenkins muttered, I didn't know." "That's the problem. You didn't care to know. You saw color, and that was enough. You slammed a decorated officer, a husband, a father, a man who has bled for your right to exist in that uniform, and you did it without hesitation." Jenkins looked up, his face twisted with regret, but Davis saw it for what it was, fear of consequences, not change of heart. "You won't be arrested today," Davis continued, "because I want you to see this play out in slow motion. I want you to watch as your badge, your pension, your position erode piece by piece. You'll go to trial. You'll be questioned. Your name will be on every screen, every page, every morning news cycle. And when this is over," Davis leaned in close, voice cold and sharp as a blade, "you won't be remembered as a cop who made a mistake. You'll be remembered as the officer who tried to break a general and ended up breaking himself." Jenkins stared at the ground. That night the video went viral, Not just the body slam, but the moment his unit arrived, the soldiers in formation, the firm voice calling out, "General Davis," the stunned silence that followed. It tore through social media like wildfire. Hashtag salute the general. Hashtag he protected us, we protect him. Hashtag justice for Davis. Hashtag not your threat. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Army general slammed by local cop. Entire battalion responds in uniform. Small-town racism meets military justice. He called for backup. The U.S. Army answered. Jenkins was placed on immediate unpaid leave pending investigation. His chief resigned 2 days later after news broke he'd previously ignored 3 other excessive force complaints against Jenkins. The town mayor issued a formal apology to Davis, but it was too little too late. Meanwhile, Davis was invited to testify before a joint Senate hearing on police reform. His speech was televised live. He stood at the podium in uniform, the Capitol dome behind him, his voice clear and composed. "I did not come here for personal revenge. I came here because there are millions who never had a unit arrive in time, who were slammed down and never got back up. I survived because of my rank, my station, my privilege within the service. But justice shouldn't be a privilege, it should be a right." The chamber stood in applause. Even the hardliners looked shaken. By the end of the month, Jenkins was terminated, not just from the department, but barred from law enforcement permanently after his federal civil rights violations were confirmed. But Davis wasn't finished. He worked with national veterans groups to create the Uniform Dignity Project, a watchdog organization composed of retired military officers and JAG attorneys who would represent victims of racial profiling, especially veterans of color. He toured bases, spoke at academies, appeared on major talk shows. What started as a moment of humiliation became a movement of transformation. Yet he never once made it about himself. The only time he broke down was when his daughter, Sierra, asked him at the kitchen table, "Daddy, what would have happened if your unit didn't show up?" He swallowed hard. "Then someone else would be telling this story, baby. Maybe not me." Sierra nodded slowly. "But they did show up." He smiled. "Yeah," he said, wrapping an arm around her. "They did. And that changed everything." In a world so often cruel to the voiceless, one man's silence in the face of hate had spoken louder than sirens. And the salute he earned that day echoed far beyond the parking lot pavement where he'd once been forced to kneel. It echoed through a nation still learning who its real heroes are. And it wasn't the man with the badge that day. It was the one on the ground who rose and led.